So let us get started with Flume. We will get started with documentation, and then we actually get into setting up a first Flume job, and then we will actually see a bit of details about Flume. So for the documentation, you can go to the Google and search for Flume documentation or Flume user guide, and 1.8.0 is the latest version. But from the certifications perspective and the most of the existing parts perspective, 1.6.0 is the most relevant one, and hence you should start looking into Flume 1.6.0. There are not many differences between 1.6.0 and 1.8.0, so you don't need to worry too much about things which are working 1.6.0, whether they will work in 1.8.0 or not. So you can safely start with 1.6.0. And again, here we will be using Flume as a user, not as a developer. We will not be developing any plugins to Flume or anything. We will be just using Flume. Hence, we have to click on Flume user guide. Okay. And this is the main documentation which you have to go through in the pursuit of learning Flume. And this is the sample or typical model of Flume. Every Flume will be running as agent. Flume always will be running as agent. Agent is nothing but a combination of source, channel, and sink. Okay, and source will be reading some logs from web server, or there are a number of sources which are supported, and then the data will be streamed through channel. Quite often it is either memory or file channel, and then data will be read by sink. And sink the primary responsibility of the sink is to read data from channel at regular intervals and push it into a target database or HDFS or other supported sinks. So each and every agent which needs to be run will have properties associated with source, channel, and sink. Source will be typically configured to read data from a database or a web server or some other thing where we actually get the application data. And the sink will have configurations to write to a target such as HDFS and all those things. And channel is the one which will integrate the source and sink. Okay, this is a typical data flow model of Flume. So let's get started with our first agent, and it is called a simple example as per the documentation. And let me first copy this, whatever is the content here. Let me copy, and I am already connected to the lab, and we have Flume configured on the lab, so you don't need to worry about setting up and all those things if you have active subscription on the lab, or if you have Cloudera Quick Start virtual machine or Hortonworks Sandbox, or your own environment where the big data cluster is set up with Flume. You shouldn't be worried about setting up Flume by yourself. If you have to set up the Flume as a standalone on your PC from Apache distribution, then it will be a nightmare and we will not be supporting it. We are assuming either you are using our lab or Cloudera Quick Start VM or Hortonworks Sandbox, or any cluster you have with all these services already configured. If not, you need to work with your admin team if you are from a corporate, and get these tools added, whatever is missing, so that you can practice without much hiccups. That being said, I am creating a directory here by name Flume demo. Okay, and then I am saying example.conf and pasting whatever is copied from the browser. Okay, and you can see that there is a common string in the beginning, A1. Okay, and this is not a keyword. You can name whatever you want. It is nothing but a agent name. So when you try to start this data flow model, you have to use the name A1. A1 is the agent name, and this agent is configured with one source, one sink, and one channel. Okay, and then there are properties which starts with agent name dot sources, A1 dot sinks, and then A1 dot channels. Okay, after defining sources, sinks, and channels, here we are trying to integrate the source and sink with the channel. So here, to begin with, first we define sources, sinks, and channels separately. All the important properties which we need to set up for this simple example, we have done that. If you go back to the picture, so first we define some properties on source, some properties on channel, and some properties on sink, and they have to be connected. Okay, and those connections have happened towards the end, binding the source and sink to the channel. Okay, so whatever arrows you are looking here are defined here as part of the last two lines. Okay, so here A1 is the agent name, and this is source name, this is sink name, this is channel name, and that's why we as R1 is the source, all the source properties started with agent name dot keyword sources dot source name, and then some properties. We will see those things in a while. Okay, so that is how any Flume data model will be defined. So first let us run this. And before running this, let us understand a bit what is the type. Type is nothing but netcat. Netcat is nothing but a web server simulator. And what is the sink? Sink type is logger, which means whenever you enter some messages into this web service, which is running on localhost and port number 54, and these are the properties which are defining how the web service should be run using netcat. It has to be bound on localhost, and the port number is 44444. Okay, and as it is web service, you can telnet into it, and you can start entering something into that web service using this combination of IP address and port number. And logger will actually take those messages and print on the web server itself. Okay, it is just to get started with Flume. There is nothing fancy. You will never use this type of configuration as part of the projects. Okay, so now let us run it and you will understand what I'm talking about. I saved it and came out of it. And Flume agents are started using Flume-ng. And you can hit enter and you can see different control arguments here. Okay, to start an agent, you just have to say Flume-ng agent, and then you have to give the name --name or -n, and this has to match whatever is the first string in all our properties in the configuration file, which is example.conf, which is nothing but A1. Okay, so you have to say Flume-ng name, agent --name A1. And that is the and then you have to pass the file, configuration file, where your configuration file is. Our configuration file is under this path. So home dgadraju flume demo example.conf should be passed to conf.file, and from there it will run without any issues. So Flume ng agent --name A1 --conf file or -f home dgadraju flume demo example.conf and hit enter. And when the agent is started, you should watch to make sure that there are no exceptions raised. And you can see towards the end of these messages, it said created server socket on this 127.0.0.1, which is nothing but localhost and port number 4444454. So as the web server is started, that is because we defined type as netcat, and it is purely for exploratory purposes. We will not be using this to this as netcat and logger as part of the projects. We only use this for exploratory purposes. Now, if you go back to the picture, we have defined the source, and this source includes the web server. Instead of connecting to the external web server, we have created a web server into it, and we will try to connect to it and try to send the messages into it so that those messages are captured. And again, sync is nothing but the logger, which is nothing but this one. So when we type the messages will come back to this, because the sync is defined as logger, and that logger is nothing but what a web server is created here. Again, this is purely exploratory purpose. Okay, so here I am opening another Cygwin window, connecting to the lab. As the web server is running, if telnet is installed in your environment, you should be able to set telnet localhost 44444 and hit enter. And now you can say hello world, how are you? You can see the messages streaming to this web server logs. You can see hello world, how are you? And you are seeing those messages immediately. That is because our sync is nothing but logger. So in this picture, we just simulated a source and the sync, which are nothing but a simulated web server by using source as netcat and sync as logger. And we have seen the simple example how we can start the agent and all those things. Starting agent is very straightforward. You just have to use flume-ng agent and then hyphen name. A1 is the have to be same as the string which is defined in the beginning of all the properties in the configuration file, and hyphen conf file, we can pass the configuration file using which we want to determine the source, channel, as well as sync. That being said, we have successfully ran the first example. Now we will deep dive what are different sources and all those things, and then we will explore Flume further.